They say the greatest inventions come from necessity, but sometimes they're born from loss. Not the kind you can measure or fix, but the kind that changes the way you see the world, even when you can't see it anymore. This is the story of a man who went blind and then built a machine to see. His name was Arun Patel. Before the darkness came, he was an engineer in Bangalore, a quiet man with an obsession for building things that worked. Circuits, code, light sensors. He spent his days surrounded by the pulse of creation. He believed in data. He believed in precision. And he believed in the eyes that guided him through every blueprint he ever drew. Until one morning, they stopped working. It began as a blur, headlights melting into clouds, text on screens dissolving like ink in water. Doctors said it was retinitis pigmentosa, a rare condition that slowly turned sight into shadow. There was no cure. For months, he refused to believe it. He tried every clinic, every experimental treatment. But by the time he turned 35, the world had faded into nothing but sound. Imagine that. A man who spent his life seeing how things work, suddenly trapped in a world that no longer showed him anything. Most people would have stopped there. He didn't. He said later, "When I lost my sight, I didn't lose my curiosity." So he began to listen to the rhythm of his cane against the floor, the direction of wind through a window, the way footsteps echoed differently in open rooms and narrow halls. Sound became his new light, and in those sounds, he started hearing possibility. At night, while the city slept, he sat in his small apartment, recording sounds. Traffic, footsteps, conversations. He mapped them in his head like coordinates on a grid. He wondered, what if sound could become vision? What if you could translate the world into something the mind could still understand? That question became his obsession. He started designing what he called Project Navikarana, Rebirth in Sanskrit, a machine that could turn the world into patterns of sound and vibration. He learned to code again, this time using voice recognition software. He built circuits by touch, memorizing the shape of each resistor and the feel of each wire. He burned his fingers more times than he could count. But slowly, piece by piece, the machine took form. It was small, a headset, like a pair of glasses without lenses. Inside were tiny cameras that captured the world ahead. A processor converted images into sound. Higher tones for light, deeper tones for dark. Movement became rhythm, and shape became harmony. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. One morning, he put it on and stepped outside. The street sang to him. The edges of buildings hummed. The movement of people became music. He could hear the world again, and for the first time in years, he knew exactly where he was. When journalists first heard about him, they thought it was science fiction. But neuroscientists later confirmed it. The human brain doesn't just see with the eyes, it interprets signals. Arun had simply given his brain new ones. His device, they said, was an early prototype of sensory substitution. But to him, it was something else entirely. It was freedom. He once said, "People think blindness is the absence of sight. It's not. It's the absence of reference. Once you give the mind a new reference, it starts seeing again." After the story went viral, tech companies reached out. One even offered to buy his design, but he refused. He wanted it open source, available to anyone who needed it. Because for him, the machine wasn't a product. It was a promise. That losing one sense doesn't mean losing your place in the world. Today, hundreds of engineers across the world are expanding on his design, building tools that help the blind navigate, paint, even dream in shapes and colors again. But Arun doesn't call himself an inventor anymore. He calls himself a translator between worlds, between sight and sound, between what's visible and what's felt. And when asked if he ever misses seeing faces, sunsets, colors, he smiles and says, "I still see them, just differently." We often think of vision as something we have, something we can lose. But maybe vision is something we build. Every time we choose to understand the world in a new way, we are in a sense learning to see again. So the next time you close your eyes, don't think of it as darkness. Think of it as the beginning of another way to see.